This is the Manufacturing Technology Podcast. I'm Gary Minchell, and this podcast is brought to you as always by Ignition from Inductive Automation. Does anybody know what digital transformation is? Does anybody really care? Apologies to Chicago, but that seems to be the theme of everywhere I'm going anymore, is we're all talking about digital transformation. A couple of years ago, it was Industry 4.0, and we still hear about that. And we've heard about smart manufacturing and Internet of Things and a bunch of other things. And I think actually most of it is getting to be synonymous as all these streams converge into just using digital technologies that we've been developing for years. Anyway, I have been on the road, so I haven't done a podcast for a couple of weeks. I meant to do one on the road from Dell, another one on the road from, although I did post some videos I did with Dell, but another one I was on the road with GE. So I went from New York City to San Francisco. And then I last week was in Providence, Rhode Island, so I've hit both coasts, and it's getting to be interesting. Next week I will be in Houston for the Rockwell Automation meetings. There's three of them, the Process Systems Group, a Spatial Media Day, and then Automation Fair. And then after that, I'm heading, well, to see the kids for Thanksgiving, and then Madrid, Spain with HPE, or Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and we'll be talking Internet of Things over there. Then I probably settle down for December, I hope. So busy time. So Dell, would you make $1 billion? That's B, $1 billion bet on Internet of Things. That's what has evolved out of the little startup group headed by Andy Rhodes that I was introduced to a couple of years ago. As Dell, the IT company, got into Internet of Things, and part of that was industrial internet, which I cover. And so I've been part of their influencer marketing group, if you will, and get some perks and some behind the scenes interviews and so on. Very interesting what Dell is up to. But they have moved that little startup group from that status to a full division status. It now reports to a VP General Manager and CTO of VMware, Ray O'Farrell. And so we have bigger status, but we have more stuff that is being included as it broadens out into the entire Dell portfolio, which includes VMware and some products that they have called Pulse and a number of other things. So they're investing $1 billion. Michael Dell has been talking about it from the keynote, so he expects more than to sell a few gateways. And that was always my curiosity. And interesting stuff from Dell. We'll see what happens as the IT people get involved. And as I mentioned, then I'm traveling to Madrid because their rival HPE also has an Internet of Things practice or group, and it's headed by a man I met with National Instruments years ago, Dr. Tom Bradich, and that is interesting in what they're doing. They have gateways, of course, also because computer companies and server companies, they do that kind of stuff. But they also have been working, so it'll be interesting to see where HPE is heading in competition with Dell. So the IT people reaching down into our area. I took for the first time, this was the 6th annual GE Minds and Machines conference, and it has evolved from a thought leadership conference of just a few people to 3,800 of their closest friends in the Moscone Center in San Francisco. And the conference was pretty good. I got some interviews where I learned a lot about what's going on. Interesting stuff about predix. Everybody hears about predix. In fact, my stockbroker called me earlier this afternoon, and he wanted to pump. I said, I went to see GE. Oh, what do you think? Everybody's asking about GE. I said, well, I don't give stock advice, but given that the new CEO was the CFO once and also a division head, I believe that what we're going to see is something to bump up stock price in a hurry, because they got one of those activist investor dudes on the board, and they don't care about us little guys. They want a quick payout, and so we'll see how he gets bought off or paid off or whatever the heck. financial terminology, that is. But Predix, I always thought maybe it was an overlay that they had all this software and they overlaid it. But Predix is actually a platform, and then they build things on top of the platform. And the thing they're really pushing is APM, asset performance management, and it's a key to a lot of the work that they do in their industrial internet. And they released a new thing. Let's see, APM, they have OPM, operations performance management, but it's not doing control in operations in that regard, like some of the other companies. But it also is a metrics-driven Internet of Things play on top of Predix. So I think Predix is misunderstood. I know I certainly did. I never got a really good explanation until a couple of weeks ago. So GE, it's interesting. The new CEO, John Flannery, said that they're all in on digital and continuing down the path that ML put them on. We'll see what happens with the whole company. I have read some stuff, no insider information, but I have heard, and I expect maybe some spin-offs or divestitures, something to get some cash and either bump up the dividend or bump up the share price or both. So expect to do that. Speaking of share prices and all that kind of stuff, Rockwell Automation has been the subject of rumors for years and years about getting bought out. One of my friends, Jim Pinto, predicted that for a long time. He said it has reached a size that it can't grow that fast anymore, at least not internally, and something had to happen. And he based that on some Harvard Business Review articles, a couple of them that I read and thought, didn't exactly say that, but he's got some truth to that rumor or that thought pattern. So anyway, we're all talking about it all the time, and and who would be my analysis always was if it's purchased as an acquisition to fit in with a company, there are really only two real players, ABB and Emerson. I had somebody with ABB tell me they looked seriously at Rockwell, figured they could not absorb it, and I think he's probably right in my opinion. And so what happened? ABB just recently bought B&R Automation for their discrete manufacturing side, which works very well. And I think that culture fits better. Rockwell's culture is going to be really hard for anybody to absorb because it's its own unique culture, very, very inbred, actually, really. You need to really come up through the system. But be that as it may, Emerson, the word broke, that Emerson got the price up to $27.5 billion to purchase or acquire Rockwell. And the Rockwell board turned it down. And then that information got public. A couple of things there. One, I've noticed for about a year Rockwell's stock price going up and up and up and up, and there's no underlying fundamental that says it should be going up. The competition to it has got about similar businesses, and it's not going up the way Rockwell was. So there were people evidently betting on an acquisition. And so why did the news become public? People asked me last week as I was in another conference. And I said, well, guess what? Now there's a price in the public. Now there's a price that's been stated. It's out there. It's got to be greater than $27.5 billion for the acquisition. So let the bidding begin, but I don't know who else will attempt it, to be honest. GE doesn't look like it's in acquiring mode right now, and I don't know what they would do with it because they've got automation and control, but it's not very big. And GE just sold its the industrial business to ABB, which is it's a whole different kind of business away from automation. So, I don't know if ABB's got money or if, they probably still don't want to acquire it. So I don't know what will happen to Rockwell. It'll be interesting. I think if it's going to not get acquired, it needs to start acquiring. We're well down the path in this industry of consolidation. Siemens has been buying up things. Schneider Electric has been buying up things. ABB, there for a while, started divesting the stuff Joe Hogan bought, and now it's acquiring again. So there's more acquisitions. Emerson has been built on consolidating the industry quite well, as a matter of fact. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. It could well be time for more consolidation in the industry, and we'll see what happens in the future. Somebody else got money. Somebody came to me a few years ago and they were talking about acquisitions and the way they hinted. I said, well, you're probably not going to buy Rockwell, and they said we've got $1 billion, and I said I was right on that one. I said $1 billion isn't even going to touch it. And so I don't know what they wound up doing with their $1 billion. That's that's only enough money to buy a relatively small company. Actually, it probably wouldn't even have gotten Schneider's software. And once again, there's a weird financial situation what Schneider Electric did with its software division. So interesting things financially going on in our industry. We'll see what really shakes out. See how much longer Rockwell remains independent, or maybe it has to go on the acquisition trail to grow and compete like everybody seems to be. Everybody seems to be looking at Siemens and going for them. So anyway, that's a little bit of a roundup of what's going on in the industry right now. And have a good day. This is Gary Minchell and Gary's thoughts on manufacturing technology. And this podcast is brought to you by Ignition from Inductive Automation.